What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now we're going to be getting into the Blade of Verdict Messiah. Not only is this character able to hold his own when it comes down to single target capabilities, but he's also going to be able to wreak havoc when it comes down to AoE cleaving and just making sure that his opponents really honestly cannot do anything to him. Now, when we're looking at what type of unit Messiah is the truest form of a DPS with some sustain within his kit. Now, when we actually look at his skill 1, Messiah swings a giant sword in a diagonal cross pattern twice, dealing 2 hits of 130% damage to a single enemy with a 25% chance to inflict a 2-turn of vulnerability. Also within this is a skill called Judgment. When Messiah defeats an enemy target, he gains 1 turn of invincibility, and if he's already under invincibility, his duration is extended by 1 turn, and this can be triggered only 1 time per turn. Now, the reason why this skill is so broken is because you have the vulnerability, which increases damage taken by 30%, and then you gain invincibility when you defeat an enemy. The other thing that actually makes this really OP is the fact that he can actually extend the duration of invincibility if he's already under the invincibility. And this is something that we'll talk about when we get to the skill 3 and how this actually coincides with each other. Now, when we get into the skill 2, Dual Judgment, Messiah creates a energy copy of his sword, dual wielding as he charges and continuously strikes the target, dealing 3 hits of 90% damage to a single enemy. For every 1% HP lost by the target at the last hit, increases the damage multiplier by 6%. So what this means essentially is that the first 2 hits of damage is going to be obviously decreasing the value of HP that character has. And based off of the HP percentage that those first 2 hits do, the third hit is actually going to have an increase to the damage multiplier of 6%, just to kind of further explain that. Now, when we're looking at the skill 3, Divine Descent, Messiah unleashes accumulated energy to strengthen himself and impact enemies, then transforms the energy into a giant sword to strike all enemies, dealing 2 hits of 170% damage to all enemies, and then this attack breaches target passives and 50% defense and applies a 1-turn invincibility to himself. This is going to be making it to where he basically can mitigate passive effects from the opponents that he's targeting. But not only that, he's going to be able to nullify 50% of their defense, which is making it much easier for him to be able to penetrate them and dealing his damage that he's going to be dealing from his AoE. The other thing is too, is that when you're looking at the rotation of how he works with his skill 3 into his skill 1, you're applying the invincibility from this first skill. And because more than likely characters will be hanging on by a thread, not only are you obviously going to have the vulnerability in the skill 1, but there's a high chance that you'll be able to finish off your targets, which then is going to further increase the turn duration of the invincibility. So his kit actually works really well and just is smooth transitioning when you're really looking at it at base. As far as module recommendations, I would definitely recommend that you would want to aim for in the early game the Onslaught set, which at max is going to give you 45% attack at a 12 set bonus. Now, when we're looking at other recommendations, I would definitely say the Bramble set is another good go-to. The Bramble is going to be giving you defense plus 10% at an 8 set, and Animus has a 25% chance to counterattack with a basic attack when hit. And remember, the skill 1 has the chance to proc the vulnerability, but also if you're able to get a kill, it then will further increase the duration of your invincibility. Now, later down the line, when you get access to things like Keen-Eye is actually going to be really good at a 12 set piece because this is going to be giving crit damage plus 18%. And the first 3 instances of damage dealt by this Animus during the turn are increased by 25%, 15%, and 5% respectively. And then, of course, when you get into true endgame, I would definitely say Fury Edge takes the cake, where it gives crit rate plus 12% and an additional crit damage of 20%. When we're also looking at some of the main stat values that you want to aim for as much as you possibly can, crit rate definitely is going to be a pretty big deal for Messiah. Also, crit damage is also going to be a big deal. But if you have to get anything first, it would definitely be crit rate and then say attack in the early game, because you might not have the best rolls or even really getting the drops for things like crit damage right off rip. But ultimately, it will end up being a crit rate, crit damage, and an attack slot for the main slots. Now, as far as skill prioritization, I would definitely say the skill 3 would be first, with the first major node increasing damage multiplier to 160%. The second one would be increasing the effect of the defense breach to 35%. The next node would be increasing the damage multiplier to 170%. And then the final node in this one will be actually increasing the effect of the defense breach to 50%. Now, keep in mind that this skill is really important because it is the initiating skill that more than likely will be what funnels best into your skill 1 and then into your skill 2. Now, when you're actually looking at what's next, I would definitely recommend the skill 1, with the first major node increasing damage multiplier to 120%. The second one will be actually increasing the chances of inflicting vulnerability to 25%. Then after that, you get the increased damage multiplier to 130. And then lastly, it will increase the duration of vulnerability to 2 turns, which again means that the opponent is going to be taking 30% more damage. Now, lastly, of course, we have the skill 2, which is going to be giving you an increased damage multiplier of 85%. Then you'll also have the next node, which increases the damage multiplier to 6%, and that's for the final hit. Then you'll have an increased damage multiplier to 90, and then you also will have the cooldown reduced by 1 turn. Now, as far as shell recommendations, in the early games from Zox, what you're actually going to be going for is the Agent Lizard. So this obviously really works well with what Messiah already innately does. Looking at the next one, I would definitely say in Apate, you would have the Budo Panda. I would also say when we're looking at the next shell boss here, it would be Phoebian, which is going to basically be the Twilight Knight. So this could be really clutch with the skill 3 for helping you already add more value to the 50% that you'll be able to basically go through. The next one would be coming from Whitney here. Whitney is going to have the first Life Leech one that you'll have access to, and Life Leech is basically going to make it to where any damage you deal, you restore HP off of that. Lastly, I would say one of the big ones that you're going to be looking at is going to be, well, second to last, which is going to be White Fang. And then lastly, you would be looking at Asarte, and this is kind of depending on what you might be utilizing Messiah for. I would definitely recommend Count. Now, as far as some pros and cons for Messiah, I would definitely say the biggest pro to him is that he's actually really good at AoE nuking and cleaving. This is great for both PvE and PvP, and because he's also able to give himself the invincibility, it makes it to where he's basically guaranteed to making sure that he's going to have an up on his HP, and really honestly allowing him to kind of attack and hit whoever he wants, or even being hit without having to worry about any sort of retaliations coming back or counterattacks and that working him down. The only weakness he has is to Disorder, and this is actually a good thing because this is basically the light-dark relationship in the game, and most units that are typically Disorder or Constant, they tend to actually be in a more better standing when being placed in most generalized content because they're not weak to the more used attributes that's predominant in most content, which is going to be Reason, Hollow, and Odd. Now, the other thing is having a skill 1 that can further increase his invincibility if he gets the kill, and then also being able to proc vulnerability is pretty huge because that means that any other teammate or ally is going to be able to take advantage of dealing 30% more damage to their opponent. So that's basically that, guys. I hope that this was able to give you a lot more insight on the Blade of Verdict Messiah, giving you a better understanding as far as his value and the unique role that he plays in Etheria Restart. Make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and comment down below what you think and how you like Messiah if you've had a chance to try him out. Everybody, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.